Testing. I think we're just live. Hello, friends. I'm going to demo for a little bit, and then I'm gonna roll out. Thought I'll do a little bit of a stream. Haven't done it in a little bit. Oh man, it's on the second monitor. Let me do this. Gonna test something. See if the chat is working. Anyone in the chat? Let me write it down. Anyone here? I think I still might have to go to my. Let us see. Let us see. Oh yeah, it's working fine. Alright, so I can close this then. I don't need that open. What I've done in the past was I had like Photoshop or YouTube open so that I can see the chat, but this way is better, so that way I don't have to. Alright, let's try to get something a little bit. Let's try to do 3 compositions. I'm gonna hang out for a little bit. Probably like 15 minutes. So probably longer than that, to be honest. Oh, hold on. There you go. Okay. Chat is working okay. Awesome. Hi there. What's up, Tony? What's up, Goma? What's up, Will? What's up, Shane? What's up, Drawhouse? Alright. Okay, here we go. So, I don't think you guys have seen me do an environment of some sort. So this should be fascinating. Let me think of the tool that I want to use here. I think I might have it in brushes. Or is it AJ's texture brushes? Maybe it's in here. Yeah. Yeah. Or even this one. Cool. Alright. What was I going to do? I was going to do something actually before I got into this. Oh, yeah. Okay. So hope everyone's doing good. Hope everyone's going to have a fun holiday. I don't know how many of you guys celebrate Easter, but it's like right around the corner. So that should be fun. I mean, how many of you guys, do family stuff during the Easter holiday? And if you don't do anything, what is everyone going to do during the weekend? I don't think it's this weekend. Is it this weekend? I don't know. I don't really care much for. I really don't care much for this specific holiday. I think it's kind of a bizarre holiday. I mean, any reason to not go to work, I guess, right? People get excited. It's just changed since I work from home. So like holidays that usually would let us off, or days that would let us off, I don't really have off. It's to save. I don't really, nothing's changed. And so that's probably why like I feel way more like nonchalant about the holiday. Okay, so let's get into this. Yeah, so since this is an environment, I'm going to be a little bit. Oh, yeah, that'd be tight. I'm going to be a little bit more silent by the nature of of the content because I'm way less experienced. But I have been doing environment drawings on my sketchbook, so I feel way better than I normally would. Interestingly more comfortable than I normally am. Okay, that's good for that. There, here you go. I'm just gonna paint and paint, says Will. Tony says, I live in Thailand, so no Easter, but we just finished Songkran. What's Songkran? The heck? Songkran. What is that? And then, bought some of your tutorials, gonna study a lot. Cool, Will, thank you. Do you do Plan A studies? I do not. Maybe I should. I can see the value in doing so. What I do is just way more aggressive. My studying habits. I just straight up just practice a lot. And I have a lot of focused practice. So for instance, right now I'm working on a project. I'm working on a couple projects actually, and one of them requires some environment design, and so I'm trying to design an environment and be a little bit more calculated than I normally am. And so I'm doing some thumbnail sketches of just kind of like the environment, what it could possibly be. Again, this is not normally my skill, so forgive me if it's not great. But I will say that it is better than I anticipated. And I give that credit to what I was just talking about, like me studying and practicing. I've been doing that a lot more. Okay. Let's do a thing. Let's draw my scalar. So what this is going to be something for me to understand the scale. And I'm going to be very quiet probably for the next moment. Because again, normally when I'm painting, I'm doing stuff. So right now I'm like able to talk since it's like a character design. But normally whenever I'm painting, I'm doing something that I'm familiar with. But in this regard, I'm not that familiar with this. So I'm going to be a little bit more silent. That's just the nature of it. I always like to tell my students too, like whenever they take my class, they always ask me like how I paint and how I do things pretty well. And I try to explain to them it's just I'm just very skilled at it, and that skill is obtainable. Anyone can really get it. I'm just a person who happens to have it, and you're impressed by it. But anyone else can really do it too. And for whatever reason, people don't really think that that's true, but it's absolutely true. And so I always talk about how whenever I'm doing something that I'm not good at or not as skilled at, I'm way more focused. I'm like, I have to like shut up. I can't really talk. But you know, I think it's important for me to do streams as often as I can. Like I said, at least once a week. So I've been doing pretty good about that so far for the last few weeks. And then there's nothing that says I can't do like my studies and for people to hang out. And so I figured, why not? All right, let's see how we're gonna scale this chick. Yeah, that could be cool. Okay, now that I have her in here, she is gonna be mostly in shadow. Oops, not locked. Didn't lock the transparency on this one. Okay, so what might need to happen here for the sake of this illustration is a little bit more kind of like fog. That's a good idea. Okay. Let's see what I can do here. Okay. And then she's probably a little too contrasty, so let's bring her down a notch. And she may actually still be too big too. It makes it feel way more epic. Alright, I'm gonna read some of the questions while I kind of reevaluate the next. But now, see, now I messed up the feng shui. So I need to bring that back a little bit. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good for now. As a concept, that works perfect. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one. How am I doing on time? 15 minutes. Spent like 15 minutes on the first one. Or more like 10 minutes, but it should be good. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. Oh, yeah. I'm going to work on projects. I'm assuming that's for, what you call it, for the Easter comment. A spring holiday celebrating planting, and the whole country engages in a big water fight. Oh, that's pretty cool. I love your work, Anthony. I'm 16, and hopefully one day we'll be in the industry. Yep, you're still pretty young, so it's going to eventually happen. Keep at it. Thanks for sharing your time and skills with us. Yep, not a problem. Okay, so let's try something else. Okay, so I had an idea in my mind. Let me see if I can conceptualize it. So I think this is what's going to happen. I'm trying to imagine this. Okay, yeah, I think it's going to be something like this. Yeah, okay, that's cool. All right, let me try again now. And then so we would have the character over here. So then how does that light hit this character? It's going to be like this. Then we're going to have that. It's going to be like that. Just the impression. We don't have to get too specific, even though I'm doing that. And then we would get a little bit of bounce light just because it's so hot. You know, it's funny though, like I'm thinking about like how this is going to be possible with like the tools that I have available, because I'm making this as a project, and so I'm trying to make sure that I can actually do the things that I'm concepting. Yeah, okay. I gotta take my time, pay attention. Like I said, when I'm doing stuff that challenges me. But this is like straight concept art too. Because normally whenever I'm painting and stuff and doing stuff for people when they're watching, it's more of like a show rather than concept art. Because concept art looks more like this, where I'm just thinking. Yeah, I'm getting too serious though. I just need to commit. Yeah, I just need to commit. Stop getting caught up in the details, bro. Okay, yeah, just step back. And so I'm trying to envision parts of my game like narratively, and this is one of those moments. And what I'm trying to do is imagine like the light um, coming on to like this door or opening, and then we can start see our character for the first time, whatever that may look like. And I'm trying to like imagine what it would be in terms of a concept, and the goal is obviously to try to make it look like what it's supposed to look like too. And I got to be very careful that I don't spend too much time like trying to do an illustration. I'm trying to do a concept. And whenever people are concepting, they always treat it like an illustration. And whenever that happens, they tend to spend way too much time. They spend too much thought. They get way too caught up in the details. As you saw me, I was even doing it. It happens. Normally I'll have an inner dialogue, as you guys heard, and I just tell myself to stop. Yeah, this is pretty good. And then once I tell myself to stop, I'm pretty good about stopping. But some people don't have that like that ability to tell themselves to stop. You know what I mean? They just keep painting, and then hours later, they have something that's kind of mediocre, and they're just like, "What was I doing? Why was I wasting so much time?" Yeah, okay, so the light would be coming over here then, wouldn't it? So we would get a little glimpse of it over there. Yeah, see, like, I kind of like, painted it out. So it's funny that I spent all that time when I ultimately just got rid of everything. And this is supposed to be illustrative. So I'm like deliberately trying to make it feel more like a story is being told. Yeah, this is good enough. Whoops. Pixel art. Yeah, I might do another illustration. So this is kind of like something that I wanted to do. I wanted to like convey a very specific idea and see how it may feel. And then let's go ahead and illustrate kind of that vantage point now. No, actually, we should do like another illustration. We should do another environment. Okay. So let me think this through. I'm going through some reference too, see if I can get some inspiration. Yeah, okay, we can do something like this. Actually, I'll take this opportunity to see what people are writing. Hello, good sir, or hello, sir. Good evening. What's up, PG? Hey, Andrew, do you have any advice for giving critiques to other people's work? I'm part of an online study group and sometimes find it difficult when the mistakes or problems are not as obvious. Contrast and composition is sick. Thank you. Those are two different statements. One was by a guy named Animation Giant, the other one was Within Cells Interlinked. So Within Cells Interlinked, your question about critiquing other people. Yeah, I can see how it's really hard to critique other people's work, especially like if you yourself feel that you're not even as good as you would need to be, you know. And so the solution to this problem is to just do a lot of comparing of work, meaning like find people that are better and then compare the work, and maybe as a group try to determine what it is that's different about their work, and this is like the work of those you guys admire. Determine what's the difference between their work and yours, and then try to be very specific and very honest about those differences, because a lot of times people don't. Oh, dude, I need to like hold on. I just realized, because I'm using a different situation, so these are probably way brighter than they normally are. So this is a good opportunity. Let me pop another one of these, put it on the bottom here. Oh, this is still pretty nice. So even more contrasty than I wanted, but I like it actually a lot. Anyway, yeah, when you start to look at other people's work and you put it compared to yours, what's good about that is that you guys can like take a look and talk about it together. What tends to happen is that people don't do this. People tend to just focus in on just like very, superficial problems, or maybe like too broad of problems sometimes too. So it's really nice to just be able to like, okay, let's take a look at everybody's work together collectively, and then let's be honest about what we think is going on, and then see if we can go from there. So for instance, like when me and my buddies would give each other critiques, one of the things that we would constantly see is like we weren't really good at anatomy or whatever, like that meant. Like so for instance, like my buddy would be like, yeah, AJ, you should work on your anatomy because a lot of your designs feel, they like lack structure. And I was like, that's a good point, thank you for that piece of advice. And then we would just kind of like discuss further about what that would mean, like why is that true, and then we would do paint overs. We would paint over our work a lot. We would paint over each other's stuff all the time and just give critiques all the time. And so that's really nice. I was just having a stream with Jason Hill. You guys should go check it out. He's a really good artist. Good buddy of mine. We went to school together, and he even said like he still kind of has like a special group of people in which he just critiques work and sees how it goes, right? And it's pretty cool. It's really cool to have like a group of people that you can trust that will hopefully give you some honest opinions at a different level, right? These are pro artists. But again, like I said, if you don't have that access, which it seems like you don't, it's probably best that you find ways to, compare and contrast and paint over all the time. Sorry if I'm talking in circles. I'm like really distracted. I'm trying to do this painting and talk. And like I said earlier, for those of you who missed it, whenever I'm doing something that I'm not particularly skilled at, and specifically in this case, environments, I am way more focused. Now again, like it may appear that I'm doing pretty good, even though I'm not so great at it. But that's only if I can just stay quiet and just do it. Otherwise, I'm like constantly thinking about like perspective, um, reflections, lighting. There's like a lot of things that I just don't normally have at the back of my mind, that I do whenever I paint a character or creature. Like those things are so autopilot. It's pretty easy for me to just talk and paint. Yeah, so I think what I'm gonna do is just whenever I feel like there's a question that requires a longer answer, I'll just pause my painting and just answer it, and then get back to painting, and then talk about stuff that's easier to talk about. Okay, let's try to add some more deets, and then we'll probably call this a day. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, this will be the time to ask. I do like this idea of monolithic structures. Then we'll have character walking in the center of that. Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think I can totally do this. Alright, right on. And again, I'm talking to myself, but it's like it's more about like whether I can convey this illustration. And I think I can. Alright, yeah. I'll take a couple questions, and then I'm gonna roll out of here. Get out of here. I got work to do. So this is just me trying to make sure I can get stuff done. Because like I know that if I don't do it today, that next few days I won't be around to stream potentially. I'm doing stuff with other streamers actually. I'm doing a podcast, I believe Thursday, with Modern Name James. So if you guys know that YouTuber, he's really popular amongst the art community. He's really good. Him and I are streaming or podcasting. Oh, this would be cool. It's just like some massive door that you're just walking towards. That's way cooler. And so then like, okay, I see what's going on here in the story. So you can be walking towards this, and then like this is what it looks like when you get closer to it. Oh, that's great. That's a great idea. So like you're walking. First it's like you've been unleashed, and then you can start walking down the halls of whatever this place is at. Yeah, this is cool. I think this is good. Yeah, these are just thumbnails, so I'm not really... I'm trying to like... Okay, so I walked for like about an hour, and for about half an hour, and then I was just thinking to myself like these ideas, but then I just wanted to like see if I could tell the story of these ideas in my head, and then come home and then paint it. I've been doing this thing where I'm trying to like level up my skills, and one of the things I've been trying to do to level up my skills is like imagine an idea, and then try to paint it later. This is some next level Frazetta stuff. Or even Kim Jung-gi, modern day Kim Jung-gi, or some other really great artists. It is the obvious next step for someone like myself to begin to really hone in on my skills. You know what I mean? And one way to get around that is to actually... Well, what the heck's going on here? Alright, hold on, I gotta get rid of this junk. It's still kind of there. Alright. Let's crop. Okay. And then we're going to crop this top a little bit. I don't like that junk. Get that junk out of here. There you go. And so I had this idea of like this character's like in this den, and then the doors open, and then she begins to walk outside. As she walks, she sees something cool. I would actually need to probably, no, this is good enough. And then as she walks towards it, like it's really a simple game from there. It's a simple puzzle mechanic. I wonder how far that would be. Maybe it's just like to teach the player how to maneuver, give them enough time to learn how to do that, and then as they discover how to do it, they can get better and better at understanding the principle of the game and understand this is going to be very cinematic. And then from there, I actually need to start designing some gameplay. I actually have some ideas of how the game will be ran. And so, maybe it's a good opportunity to put some stuff in here. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what's up. But anyway. Oh, hold on. My wife and daughter are here with their new haircuts. Give me 1 second. Time out. Sorry about that. My wife came in right now with her haircut. Super cute. Anyways. Hey, how do you go? Oh, wait, hold on. Let me go back up. I missed some. Do you believe that an art similar to yours is achievable using line art? I can't draw without lines, and although I admire who doesn't need lines, it doesn't fit my style. Yeah, so PG, if you want to be more painterly, then you just gotta like, I guess, draw more with forms in mind. But to achieve the style, the look, it does require painting, right? But if you're trying to just get the shapes, of course you can just draw the shapes out. That's not a big deal. But if you want to get good at painting, you just got to practice it. That would be my advice. Are you going back to WakandaCon this year? I would like to, Jocelyn. That'd be great. I wonder if you are. That'd be cool. We can meet up. Are you still planning to do more on the how to draw females? Yeah, I need to just do a whole new one. I just need to do a way new revamped version. I'll put that on the roster. I have a lot of videos still to get to. I've been taking a little bit of a break. But yeah, there's a lot more to do. But yes, absolutely. I'll just make a whole new one. That will just be the ultimate guide. Also, when you were still learning certain concepts, did you make tutorials after you felt you mastered them or while you were learning them to help solidify your knowledge? What I would do is I would do what I'm doing here. I'll just talk it through. I'll show it and talk about it there. That's probably the best way to do it. I don't really think that giving out tutorials when I'm still, like selling them rather, when I'm still trying to figure things out doesn't make sense. But like, if I feel a real strong understanding, I won't mind putting a tutorial out. But if I'm doing it professionally, I absolutely don't mind putting a tutorial out. In fact, I'm more inclined to do so because that advice will be useful to people, where the other ones are more instructional. Nice. But yeah, definitely giving people advice is helpful to teach yourself better. Like when you explain to other people like how to do stuff, you have to kind of understand what you're talking about to help them better, you know what I mean? Anyways, hey, how would you go about practicing getting better at character designs in an efficient amount of time? There is no efficient amount of time other than just drawing characters all the time. And I don't just mean like studying them and practicing. I also mean like actually just sitting down and drawing characters constantly. You know, you should of course be learning how to do anatomy, perspective, form, all this stuff, but you should first learn how to basically do those things. But you should also learn just to have the habit of drawing every day. And so there's nothing faster than just doing it constantly and consistently. It's really the consistency that people suffer from. They don't do things that consistent amount of time. They usually take long breaks or shorter breaks or too many breaks or breaks too often, you know, and that's what really slows them down. So try not to do that and you'll be all right. Yeah, you're welcome, PG. And then you are, yeah, I'll be selling there. If you go, let's meet up for sure. Awesome, Jocelyn. That'd be great. Hey, I was interested in character creation for film/cinematics. Do you offer that in your mentorship program? It's the same thing. Like, it's character design specifically, but I don't really mind what people work on. Some people do creature design sometimes. Some people work out of ZBrush. Some people do photo bashing. It's all about just making you have a portfolio full of characters. And however you go about doing those characters, whether they're animation, cinematic, whatever, it's not a big deal. I'll help you out either way. Like, I had some people that were working on a comic book. I helped them with that. I had some people who were working on a movie or like movie concepts. I helped them with that. So it's just all about whatever you prefer. I take the mentor part of that the name more proactively than just the actual character part. It's more about just helping the individual students. So hope that helps you out. But hey, you know what? Thanks for joining in, everybody. Thanks for hanging out during my little concept art phase of this project that I'm working on. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope to show more. Maybe the next time you see it, it'll be more in production. It'll be cool to see things in action. But with that, peace out. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.